Welcome back to the channel. You're watching Sawtooth Tactical. Are we about to see suppressors taken off of the NFA? Are we about to see the end of the NFA as we know it? Does it make sense to buy a suppressor now, pay a $200 tax stamp, get put on a registration list when we could possibly not have to deal with all that very, very soon? We'll see. I'm not really sure, but we're going to talk about it in today's video and a couple of other things that I think are just misnomers about suppressors in general, ideas that people have that I'm not sure are true. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you're subscribed and let's begin. I've been doing a good amount of suppressor related content lately. Suppressor reviews, videos about the NFA, about the suppressor process, about how people are getting suppressors faster than ever. Everyone except for me. Obviously not everyone. There are a lot of people still waiting. But I get a lot of comments in videos over and over about suppressors and NFA items in general that I kind of wanted to talk about today. But the first one that I want to talk about, because I get this all the time in comments on suppressor videos, is that any of us that are paying for tax stamps, that are waiting, that are going through the NFA process, submitting fingerprints, filing the paperwork, e-file, whatever, and getting put on a registration, on a list, that we are stupid because very soon suppressors will no longer be regulated. And I have to assume that what people are talking about is the Texas suppressor lawsuit. The lawsuit that Texas has filed against the ATF because Texas basically passed a law saying that suppressors that are made in Texas for personal use that stay in Texas are not under the purview of the National Firearms Act. And honestly, Texas is right. The NFA has to do with interstate commerce in a lot of ways. It's a tax regulation. But the ATF, the federal government, said, nope, we are still going to treat made in Texas suppressors that stay in Texas as any other NFA items. And if you make a suppressor and you don't register it as an NFA item, even if it was made in Texas and stays in Texas and is for personal use, then we're going to throw you in prison for 10 years, fine you $250,000. Well, Texas has sued over this law, and to Texas, good for you. More states need to do the same. I'm in Idaho, and I've actually looked up the statutes, and technically, as far as I can tell, and I'm not a lawyer or a judge, in Idaho, it should be the same way. I should be able to make a suppressor as long as I keep it for personal use in Idaho and it doesn't leave the state. Really, the NFA shouldn't have anything to do with it, but it does. I've got one suppressor, I've got 3 SBRs, and I've got 2 more suppressors that I'm waiting for approvals on right now. And all of them, I've had to do the NFA process, the NFA paperwork, pay $200 tax stamps on. Quick word from this video's sponsor. I've been using Aura now for a couple of months. I know you guys have seen it in my videos if you've been watching, and it's a product and a service that I really actually believe in at this point. It has totally stopped me from getting spam calls. Now, data brokers are a real thing these days. Scammers, spammers, all this stuff. I've been trying to sell a pickup truck lately, and at first all I was getting was scammers. Well, Aura took care of that, and I'm not hearing from the scammers anymore. Unfortunately, I still haven't sold the truck, but I've got a lot of examples like that. In fact, the place where I work just recently got scammed and we lost out on a whole day's worth of revenue. Well, Aura can stop things like that from happening. They search the entire internet for anywhere where your information is being sold to people, and they submit opt-out requests on your behalf, which takes care of your information being out there. It clears you up, so that you stop getting spam calls, you stop getting scammers. There are people out there these days whose whole career is just scamming people out of their money by finding their information on the internet. And as sickening and as sad as that is, it's a reality. And for only $12 a month, you can stop them from being able to take advantage of you. If you use my link, which is the first link in the description, aura.com/sawtooth-tactical, you get to try it out free for 2 weeks. And then you can decide if it's something that you still want to stick with. But Aura is pretty confident that you'll stick with it, and that's why they give you that 2-week free trial. $12 a month after that is a really good deal for all of the different things that you get with Aura. I've been sticking with it for a few months. I'm really happy with it. I respect my privacy and I respect yours. Is Texas going to win this lawsuit? I think there's a very good chance that they might, actually, honestly. I think there's a really good chance. I've been following it fairly closely. And again, like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a fairly intelligent person. And of course, I am biased. I want them to win this lawsuit. But if they do, does that mean that all of a sudden the NFA doesn't exist anymore? Or that suppressors are not off the NFA? Not really. It might be the beginning of the end for the NFA, or at least the beginning of the process to finally get suppressors taken off the NFA, which they should be. I mean, literally, they're a safety device. And they're a lot more popular today than they were in 1934 when the National Firearms Act was put into place, or in 1968 when the Gun Control Act was put into place. And they're not used by criminals. They're used by enthusiasts, by hunters, by people that like to shoot a lot. Criminals aren't going to pay $200 for a tax stamp and wait up to a year to get approved for a suppressor. And probably, if they have any violent criminal history, they wouldn't be approved anyway, so they wouldn't risk going through that process. Suppressors aren't used by criminals. And so any reasonable judge or justice, if it ever makes its way to the Supreme Court, I don't think that it is logical for them to keep suppressors regulated the way that they are. Or SBRs, or honestly, machine guns, but that's just me. But is this going to happen anytime soon? Well, even if Texas wins this lawsuit, it would still be a very long time. The way our legal system works, before it worked its way through everything, I believe it would have to go up to the Supreme Court for it to be taken off the NFA, that National Firearms Act. It's not the Texas Firearms Act. So this is something that, if it did happen, and I hope it does in my lifetime, it's going to take a very long time. I don't want to wait that long to get a suppressor. To me, as much as it sucks, it is worth paying the $200 tax stamp and going through the process so that I can suppress my firearms. To you, it might not be. But for people to say that that is the reason that they are not buying suppressors because they're waiting for them to be deregulated next week, unfortunately, I think you're kidding yourself. Another thing that people say all the time is that, that they're not going to ask the government for permission to exercise a right. And I understand that. We should not have to do that. But honestly, every time that you go buy a firearm and you fill out a 4473, that's exactly what you're doing. There might not be a $200 tax stamp involved, but you are having to prove to the government that you are legally able to own firearms. Now, I do think it's totally ridiculous that all you have to do is pass a NICS instant background check to get a firearm and walk out the door. I mean, we shouldn't even have to go through the NICS check. It's totally unconstitutional. But then we have to go through this up to a year or more long process to get an accessory that quiets your firearm down. How backwards is that? But unfortunately, it is the reality. And the thing is if you're a gun owner, you've already asked the government for this kind of thing. If you have a driver's license, you've gone through that process. If you've bought a house, it's not the way things are supposed to be. It's not the way that our country was designed. Our Constitution was meant to limit the government so that the people had all the freedom and all the authority. And unfortunately, we've gotten to a point in 2024 where we literally do seem to have to ask the government for permission and pay taxes in order to do almost anything. And suppressors, SBRs, NFA items are one of those things. And is the process totally unconstitutional, totally ridiculous, and expensive with the $200 stamp in a way that it absolutely should not be? Yes. But it is the reality. And if you think that you're not on a list and you're a gun owner, you are lying to yourself. Now, we're not supposed to be on the list as a gun owner. It is illegal for the ATF to have a searchable database of gun owners. But it has also been proven that they do maintain that list already illegally. And of course, they don't face the same kinds of consequences that we do for breaking the rules because they're the ATF. Another reason that I see in the comments from people as to why they would never get a suppressor is because, and I don't see this comment as often, but I know that it's a myth that people believe, hopefully just not as much as some of these other myths, I guess. But people think that if you have an NFA item, that the ATF can show up to your door, literally at any time, and come in to inspect your NFA items. That is not true. We have a Fourth Amendment right against illegal search and seizure. They can't just come in and check your stuff out anytime you want. Now, if you're an FFL, they can do an inspection. I believe it is once a year. And at some point, I do actually plan to get my FFL. I really enjoy firearms. I enjoy learning more about them. And after doing this YouTube channel for a little over 2 years, I would love to make it my business. And once I do, then yes, they will be able to come in and do an inspection. And if it's a home-based FFL, that inspection would happen at my home. But because I own a suppressor and a few SBRs right now, and like I said, I've got more suppressors on the way, does that mean that they can come in anytime they want? No. And also, while we're on that one, when you are out at the range, can any law enforcement officer ask to see your papers? Like the SS? I'd like to see the papers. No, they cannot. The only people that can actually ask to see your tax stamp, your NFA paperwork, are ATF agents. And how often do you run into ATF agents? There are not enough agents to be at every gun range looking to see if you have proper paperwork for your suppressor and that you're the legal owner of it and that you're also in possession of it and all this. It's something that people worry about a lot. Now, do I think that you should probably keep a copy of that paperwork with your suppressor or with your SBR? Yes, and I do. I have a photocopy of each one of my tax stamps. It's folded up in a Ziploc bag under the foam in whichever gun case goes with whichever SBR or suppressor, just in case that ever did happen. But the likelihood of that happening is slim to none. Now, is it absolutely possible? Yes, it is. Is it very, very unlikely? Also, yes, it is. So you don't really have to worry about that. If an RSO at a range asks to see your tax stamp on your SBR or your suppressor, you can definitely tell them no. They might think that they have the authority. They do not. They might try to kick you out of their range. Whatever. Go to a different range. I go shoot in the outdoors on public land because I don't want to deal with FUDs like that. But those kind of FUDs, they don't have the authority to do that kind of stuff. And neither do everyday police officers. I have come in contact with police officers on the way or leaving the range. In fact, I know some of them that go shooting all the time. Never once have they questioned my SBRs or suppressor. Now, one other thing that I do want to talk about in this video is this. Part of the reason I've been doing a lot of suppressor related content lately, for one, I love suppressors. Ever since I got my first one, I can't wait for these other two to get approved. And I'm going to be getting more after that. Suppressors are awesome and they make shooting more enjoyable. But because suppressor wait times have significantly shortened lately, And again, unfortunately, not for everybody. I'm not sure what the ratio is, but there's a lot of people posting very quick returns on Form 4s. But I'm guessing that for every one of those people, there's at least one or more people like me that are still waiting on them. But because, again, of those fast wait times, more people than ever are buying suppressors. Now, this could be very beneficial to us. So, in the short term, it's not, because now, unfortunately, waiting for your Form 4 for a year is not quite as much the problem for a lot of people, but it's actually finding the suppressor that they want in stock. Because suppressor manufacturers have been producing a certain quantity of suppressors, demand or supply trying to meet the demand. Well, the demand all of a sudden went much higher because a big thing that held people back from buying suppressors was that wait time. It sucks to buy something expensive and then have to wait many, many months before you get to take your personal property home. And so when people were seeing, turnarounds of days rather than many months, a lot more people decided to buy suppressors. And the suppressor manufacturers, I don't think they were privy to what was about to happen with wait times. And I'm sure that they are tooling up and working as fast as they can to have supply meet demand, but currently it's not really. And so people are waiting on places like Silencer Shop, Silencer Central, just to get the suppressor that they want in stock. There's a lot of stuff back ordered. And so that is unfortunate. But one thing that is fortunate about this is that the common use thing. So more and more people owning suppressors, and especially all of a sudden, if this Texas suppressor lawsuit goes the way that we want it to, well, if we can then take that and get it to the Supreme Court, well, I do believe then that it is very obvious that suppressors are in common use now. SBRs are also in common use, especially if the ATF considers every short-barreled gun with a pistol brace an SBR. I don't know if they thought that one through, because that definitely makes SBRs in common use. So I do think that we do have a good case eventually to get these things taken off the NFA. I just think that it's unfortunately going to take a very long time. And I don't think that that's a good reason not to get a suppressor or to SBR something, because you're waiting for that to happen. You might be waiting until you are very old. And despite everything I've said in this video, do I think that the NFA is totally unconstitutional? Absolutely. Do I think it's ridiculous that we have to go through this process at all? Absolutely. Is it stupid that we have to pay a $200 tax to exercise a constitutional right? Absolutely. So please don't get me wrong in this video. But I also don't think that any of these things are good excuses not to get suppressors. If you don't want to get a suppressor, just admit that to yourself, that you don't want to get a suppressor, that it's not worth it to you to deal with what it takes to get them. But don't go telling other people that they're stupid for going through this process, because unfortunately right now, that is the only legal way that we have to get a suppressor. Now, yes, you can still make Form 1 suppressors, although the kits, the solvent traps, the ATF has basically said that those are illegal. So unless you're going to machine one yourself, the only real other way to get a suppressor is with a Form 4 through a 0702 FFL licensed dealer. Do the NFA process. But if you do, I recommend going through Silencer Shop. Their kiosk makes it really easy. And that's how I did my first one. And then they keep all your information on file after that. And so subsequent ones are that much easier. For these last two, I didn't have to go in, do my fingerprints all over again. I did have to take a new picture because, periodically you have to do that in case your appearance changes. But really, the process is only, I wouldn't even say difficult, but you really only have to go through the full process once. And if you've gone through Silencer Shop, through their kiosk system, After that, it's very streamlined, very easy. And then you just wait. And hopefully don't wait very long. A lot of people are getting them very fast these days. A lot of people are also not. Like I said, myself included. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. Please share it. Make sure you're subscribed to Sawtooth Tactical. And from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.